The sun was setting behind the shattered skyline of what used to be Chicago. Smoke curled into the orange sky from fires burning in abandoned buildings. Streets were empty, save for the occasional shadow slipping between the ruins. The city had become a ghost town, or worse, a hunting ground. For 2 years now, America had been a battleground, a land overrun by the infected, once ordinary people turned into relentless predators. They called them the Hollow, soulless beings with a singular hunger, capable of tearing through anything that stood in their way. Most survivors had given up hope, fled, or fallen. But a few refused to surrender. Among them was a small band of fighters led by a woman named Elena. She was a former nurse who had lost everything to the outbreak, her family, her home, her faith in the world. But Elena had something that the Hollow did not: hope. And a fierce determination to keep the flame of humanity alive, no matter the cost. That evening, Elena stood on the rooftop of a crumbling warehouse, scanning the streets with sharp eyes. Her group had taken refuge here for weeks. Supplies were running low, and the Hollow were becoming bolder, creeping closer every day. Beside her, Marcus checked his rifle quietly. He was a former firefighter, big, steady, and calm under pressure. His presence was a silent reassurance to the others. Marcus had saved Elena more than once, and she trusted him like a brother. "We can't stay here much longer," Marcus said, breaking the silence. Elena nodded. "I know. But we need to find supplies before we move. Food, medicine, anything." The group had survived by scavenging abandoned buildings, moving stealthily and avoiding the largest hordes. Tonight, they planned to raid an old pharmacy just 3 blocks away. It was risky, the Hollow had been spotted nearby, but desperation outweighed caution. "Everyone ready?" Elena called to the others gathered below. A small group of 6, lean, tough, eyes sharp from months of fighting for their lives. There was Sam, a teenage boy with quick hands and a quick temper, Lily, a former mechanic who could fix anything, and 3 others, each carrying their own stories of loss and survival. They moved out carefully, slipping down the fire escape and melting into the shadows of the street. The city was eerily quiet except for distant moans and the occasional shuffle of feet, the unmistakable sound of the Hollow. As they reached the pharmacy, Elena signaled to halt. The entrance was barricaded, but one window was broken, a narrow gap just big enough to crawl through. Marcus went first, lowering himself through the opening, followed by Elena and the others. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. Shelves were toppled, glass shattered. But the pharmacy was vast, and they hoped some supplies remained hidden. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the back room. "Stay alert," Elena whispered. They crept forward, weapons raised. Behind the counter lay a Hollow, its face twisted and eyes lifeless but burning with hunger. It hadn't noticed them yet. Elena raised her rifle, took careful aim. One shot, clean and silent with a suppressed weapon, dropped the creature instantly. Relief washed over the group, but there was no time to relax. They spread out, gathering whatever they could find: canned food, first aid kits, antibiotics. The minutes ticked by with tension mounting. Then a sudden noise, a loud crash from upstairs. Everyone froze. "Trap," Marcus hissed. They moved back toward the entrance, but the broken window was now crawling with the Hollow, drawn by the noise. "Fall back!" Elena shouted. The group scattered, sprinting toward the back exit, hearts pounding, breaths ragged. Behind them, the Hollow closed in fast, their hunger relentless. Elena barely made it out the back door, slamming it shut and pushing a heavy metal shelf against it. The sound of pounding on the other side sent chills down her spine. "We need to move, now," she urged. They dashed into the labyrinth of side streets, weaving between overturned cars and piles of debris. The Hollow pursued, relentless and fast. At one point, Sam stumbled, and a Hollow grabbed him. Elena reacted without thinking, throwing a makeshift Molotov cocktail she'd saved for emergencies. The bottle shattered, flames engulfing the creature, forcing it to release Sam, who scrambled to his feet. Breathing hard, Elena looked around. They had lost the pharmacy supplies, but had saved their lives. For now. They finally reached the safety of an underground tunnel system, a forgotten subway line still passable. Inside, the cool darkness was a sharp contrast to the chaos above. Elena looked at her group, faces lit by the faint glow of a flashlight. "We're not done," she said. "Dead America isn't lost yet. Not while fighters like us still stand and resist." Her voice was steady, full of conviction. "We fight. We survive. And we reclaim what's ours." No one spoke. They all knew the truth behind those words. The road ahead was long and dangerous, but surrender was not an option. Outside, the city groaned under the weight of the undead. But somewhere deep inside, a spark still burned, and Elena was determined to keep it alive. End of part 1. Would you like me to continue to part 2 next? Or do you want to tweak anything? The underground tunnels offered a temporary refuge from the chaos above. Dim light flickered from old, battered lamps lining the walls, casting long shadows that danced and twisted in the stale air. Elena's group gathered quietly, catching their breath after their narrow escape. Elena leaned against a rusted support beam, her mind racing. They had lost the pharmacy supplies, the few precious medicines that could keep them going. But more troubling was the fact that the Hollow had been so close, so fast. Their hunting grounds were shrinking, and the undead were growing more organized, almost like they were learning. Marcus checked the perimeter with a practiced eye. "We can't stay here long. If the Hollow catch a scent down here, we'll be trapped." Lily, ever the mechanic, knelt by an old electrical box, trying to get a weak light working. "If I can get the lights on, maybe we can see if these tunnels connect to other safe spots." Sam, the youngest of the group, sat huddled in a corner, cleaning a knife with a cloth. His hands trembled, not from fear, but exhaustion. "What if we never get out of this?" he whispered. Elena knelt beside him. "We will. We have to." The tunnel was silent but for the occasional drip of water echoing from the damp walls. Every sound seemed amplified, every creak a possible threat. Elena's grip tightened on her rifle. Suddenly, a distant, hollow thud echoed through the tunnels, faint, but unmistakable. The group froze. "Did you hear that?" Lily whispered. Marcus motioned for silence, signaling the others to follow him quietly down a side passage. They moved swiftly but cautiously, the tunnel narrowing until it opened into a small, hidden chamber. Inside, they found a small group of survivors, about a dozen, sitting in silence, faces pale but alive. They looked up, startled by the sudden intrusion. Elena stepped forward, raising her hands. "We're not here to fight. We're looking for allies." One of the survivors, a tall man with a grizzled beard, stood and studied them. "You're lucky we didn't mistake you for Hollow," he said. "Name's Jace. We've been living down here for months." Jace explained that their group had been forced underground after the city fell. The Hollow controlled the surface, and the only way to survive was by hiding in the tunnels, scavenging what they could, and avoiding detection. Elena shared their story, the pharmacy raid, the close call, and the dwindling supplies. Jace nodded thoughtfully. "We have some food and medicine here, but not much. If you want to survive, you'll need to work together." For a moment, hope flickered in the weary group's eyes. Allies meant strength, shared knowledge, and maybe even a plan to push back. But the relief was short-lived. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl came from deeper in the tunnel, much closer than anyone expected. "Elena," Marcus whispered urgently. "They're here." The survivors scrambled, grabbing whatever weapons they had, pipes, knives, and rusted firearms. The air thickened with tension as the Hollow emerged from the shadows, their pale eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Unlike the scattered wanderers they'd faced before, these creatures moved with a frightening precision, almost as if driven by a collective mind. They advanced steadily, their snarls growing louder. Elena raised her rifle, firing carefully. Each shot was measured, no wasted bullets. The survivors fought desperately, striking with whatever they could. The fight was brutal but silent, the echo of weapons muffled by the tunnel walls. One of the Hollow lunged at Sam, claws outstretched. Elena threw herself forward, pushing him out of the way and driving her knife into the creature's neck. It shrieked and collapsed. But more were coming. The group was forced to retreat deeper into the tunnel, the hollow pressing forward relentlessly. It was clear the creatures were hunting, surrounding them, trying to cut off escape routes. "We need to split up," Jace shouted. "Some of us distract them, the rest get to the exit." Elena made a split-second decision. "Lily, Sam, come with me. Marcus, you take the others and create a diversion." Marcus nodded grimly. "Stay safe." The group divided, disappearing into the twisting passages. Elena's heart pounded as she led her small team toward what she hoped was a safe exit. The hollow snarls echoed behind them. Elena glanced back, seeing Marcus and the others drawing the creatures away, trading blows and gunfire. "We have to move faster," Elena urged, pushing Sam forward. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber, flooded with dim moonlight from a broken grate high above. It was a rare glimpse of the world outside. But relief turned to terror as a large hollow emerged, bigger and more ferocious than any they had seen before. Its eyes burned with a sinister intelligence, and it moved with terrifying speed. Elena raised her rifle, but the creature lunged before she could fire. Lily screamed, throwing herself in front of Elena, taking the blow meant for her. "Lily!" Elena shouted, firing at the creature's head. The shot hit, and the hollow staggered, then collapsed. Blood stained the cold concrete floor. Lily lay still, breathing hard, clutching her side. "We have to get her out of here," Elena said, voice shaking but determined. Sam helped Lily to her feet, supporting her weight. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire echoed from the tunnel behind them. Marcus was still fighting, buying time. "We can't stay," Elena said. "We'll follow Marcus's route." They moved quickly, leaving the chamber and descending deeper into the maze. Every step was a gamble, every breath a fight to survive. Elena glanced at her group, battered, scared, but still standing. They were fighters. Survivors. And as the city above groaned under the weight of the undead, they would not give up. Because Dead America wasn't lost yet. Not while they still resisted. End of Part 2. Part 3, The Echoes of War. The deeper Elena and her group went into the underground tunnels, the more they realized how fragile their refuge really was. The tunnels, once a place of safety, now felt like a cage closing in. The cold concrete walls echoed every footstep, every whisper, every breath, a constant reminder that danger was never far behind. Lily's injury was worsening. The wound on her side, though not fatal, was deep and bleeding. Sam supported her, eyes wide but determined. Elena's mind raced. Without proper medical care, Lily's chances of recovery were slim. But there was no time to stop. "Keep moving," Elena urged, her voice steady but urgent. They followed a narrow passage that Jace's group had marked on an old map they'd found in the tunnels. It led toward the old train station, a place rumored to be fortified by another survivor group. The promise of allies and resources was a fragile hope, but it was all they had. As they walked, the silence was shattered by distant explosions and gunfire echoing from the surface. The city was far from quiet. The war above had only intensified. The Hollow were not just mindless monsters anymore, they were organized, strategic, and relentless. "We're not alone down here," Marcus's voice crackled through the radio they'd scavenged. "More survivors, and more Hollow. It's a war zone." Elena tightened her grip on her rifle. "We have to get to the station. It's our best chance." Suddenly, the tunnel trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the ground shook beneath their feet. "What was that?" Sam asked, fear creeping into his voice. "An earthquake," Lily whispered weakly. The tunnel cracked and groaned. Debris began to fall, blocking their path behind them. "We're trapped," Marcus's voice came, panic edging in. "The way back is blocked." Elena's heart pounded. They were caught between the Hollow in front and a wall of rubble behind. "Keep moving forward," she commanded. "There has to be another exit." Pushing through fear and fatigue, they pressed on. The tunnels twisted and turned, becoming darker and narrower. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified. Suddenly, they emerged into a massive underground cavern, its vastness unlike anything they'd seen. The cavern was illuminated by flickering lanterns and makeshift fires. A group of survivors huddled there, armed and alert. At their center stood a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, a man who exuded authority and strength. He approached Elena with a cautious gaze. "You must be Elena," he said. "I'm Commander Rourke. We've heard about your group." Elena nodded. "We're running out of options. Lily's hurt, and the Hollow are closing in." Rourke studied Lily's wound. "We have medics here. Come with me." As they moved toward the makeshift infirmary, Elena noticed the cavern was filled with supplies, canned food, clean water, weapons. It was a stark contrast to the desperation they'd felt above. But as relief washed over them, Elena couldn't shake a growing unease. "This place," she said quietly to Marcus, "it's fortified, but it feels tense. Like something's brewing beneath the surface." Marcus nodded. "We need allies, but we also need to be careful." The medics worked quickly on Lily's wound. Elena sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "We'll get through this," Elena whispered. "Together." Just then, an alarm blared through the cavern, a harsh, grating sound that shattered the moment. Rourke's face hardened. "Hollow. They found us." The survivors scrambled to their positions. Elena grabbed her rifle, ready once again to fight for survival. Outside the cavern entrance, shadows shifted. The Hollow were coming, and this time, they were more than just a mindless swarm. They were a force, moving with terrifying coordination. Elena's group joined the defenders, side by side with new allies. The cavern erupted into chaos, gunfire, shouted orders, the clash of metal against claw. Amid the battle, Elena spotted a figure in the distance, a woman moving through the Hollow with an eerie grace, cutting them down with precise strikes. "Who's that?" Sam asked. Elena's eyes narrowed. "That's Mara. She's a legend around here." Mara fought like a force of nature, fast, ruthless, and fearless. Her presence turned the tide of the battle, inspiring the defenders to hold their ground. After what felt like hours, the Hollow finally retreated, their snarls fading into the darkness. The survivors breathed heavily, faces smeared with dirt and sweat. Rourke approached Elena. "You've got guts. We could use fighters like you." Elena met his gaze. "We want to fight. Not just survive." Rourke nodded slowly. "Then you're welcome here. But be warned, this war isn't just against the Hollow. It's against the fear, the mistrust, and the darkness that's creeping into all of us." Elena glanced at her group. They had found a new sanctuary, but the real battle was just beginning. Because Dead America wasn't lost yet, not while fighters like them still stood and resisted. End of Part 3. Part 4, Fragile Alliances. The cavern's flickering lights cast long, restless shadows over the tired faces of Elena's group. Though the immediate threat had been repelled, the battle left a raw tension hanging heavy in the air, the kind that didn't disappear with the Hollow's retreat. Lily lay on a cot, the medic's bandages pressed tight against her wound. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. Elena sat close, her thoughts swirling with what lay ahead. "We're safe here, for now," Marcus murmured, breaking the silence as he scanned the room. "But safety won't last forever." Commander Rourke stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes scanning every corner of the cavern. "We've been holding this place for months. We've built walls and weapons, but it's the people we need to watch, not just the Hollow." Elena's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Rourke's jaw tightened. "Fear changes people. When the world falls apart, it's not just the undead that threaten us, it's what's left of humanity. Trust is fragile here." Elena glanced at her team. She'd seen it too, the quick tempers, the whispered suspicions, the way alliances could shatter with the smallest betrayal. Lily coughed weakly. Elena turned to her. "How are you feeling?" Lily forced a small smile. Better, but this place, it's not like anywhere I've been before. Elena nodded. We'll figure it out. Together. Later, Elena met Mara, the woman who'd torn through the hollow with deadly precision. Mara was as sharp and fierce as the stories said, but also guarded, her eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. You're the new fighters, Mara said, her voice steady but cool. I've been watching you. Elena met her gaze. We want to fight, not just survive. Mara gave a small nod. Good. We need fighters with heart. But this place, it's complicated. Not everyone agrees on how to survive. Elena sensed the undercurrent of tension, the invisible cracks threatening to split the survivors apart. As night fell, Elena's group gathered around a flickering fire, sharing stories and plans. Marcus pulled out a crudely drawn map, tracing routes and supply caches. We have to hit the surface again, Marcus said. We can't stay underground forever. But the Hollow are stronger than ever, Sam said quietly. And the surface is chaos. Elena clenched her fists. We don't have a choice. We need supplies, allies, something to push back. The group nodded, the weight of their mission settling over them. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the cavern's entrance. Everyone tensed, weapons raised. A figure stumbled in, a young man, battered and desperate. They're coming, he gasped. A whole new wave. Bigger than anything you've seen. Rourke's face darkened. Prepare yourselves. This fight is far from over. As the survivors scrambled to ready defenses, Elena's mind raced. The Hollow were evolving, but so were the survivors. And in the shadows of fear, new alliances would be tested, secrets uncovered, and betrayals revealed. Because in Dead America, survival wasn't just about fighting the undead, it was about holding on to what made them human. End of Part 4. Want me to continue with Part 5 next? Part 5, The Breaking Point. The cavern was thick with tension. After the young man's warning, every survivor moved with urgency, weapons loaded, barricades reinforced, and eyes scanning every shadow. The air felt electric, charged with the unspoken fear of what was to come. Elena stood near the entrance, gripping her rifle tightly. She could feel the weight of every life around her, the hope and desperation mixing into a fragile thread holding them all together. We don't know how many, Marcus said, voice low but grim. But it's more than before. Rourke gathered the group. We have two choices, hold this ground or fall back to the surface and risk everything. The murmurs began. Some wanted to fight tooth and nail, others whispered of escape, of avoiding a battle they couldn't win. Elena stepped forward. We fight. We can't just give up. Her words stirred something in the crowd. They looked to her, a symbol of resilience, of hope. Hours passed like a slow, cruel heartbeat. They fortified every entrance, checked weapons, and whispered prayers for the night to pass peacefully. But peace wasn't a luxury they could afford. As darkness deepened, the Hollow emerged, a rolling wave of snarling, relentless creatures. This time, they came with a terrifying purpose, breaking through the outer barricades with brutal force. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the cavern like thunder. The clash was brutal and chaotic, screams, growls, the crack of bullets, and the sickening thud of bodies falling. Elena fought beside Mara, their movements synchronized as they cut down the attacking Hollow. But even with their skill, the enemy seemed endless. Suddenly, a deafening roar came from deeper in the cavern. The ground shook again. From the shadows, a massive Hollow, larger, stronger, with glowing eyes, charged forward, smashing through defenses. Elena! Marcus shouted, pushing her out of the way just in time. The creature turned, growling fiercely, its gaze locked on Marcus. Elena's heart pounded. We take it down, together. The battle intensified. They moved as one, Elena, Mara, Marcus, and the rest, fighting not just for survival, but for the future they believed in. But as the Hollow were pushed back, a new threat emerged, inside their own ranks. Suspicion had been growing, and tonight it broke. A shot rang out, not from the Hollow, but from within the survivors. Chaos erupted as accusations flew, and old fears ignited into open conflict. Elena tried to calm the storm. "We can't fight each other. Not now." But the cracks were deep. Trust was fraying, and the fight wasn't just against the Hollow anymore. In the chaos, Lily's condition worsened. Elena's heart broke as she watched her friend slip closer to the edge between life and death. "We have to get her help," Elena whispered fiercely. Mara nodded, eyes sharp. "I know a place, a hidden clinic on the surface. It's risky, but it's the only chance." The group faced a choice: stay and risk breaking apart or brave the surface's deadly dangers for hope. Elena took a deep breath. "We move at dawn. For Lily. For all of us." As the first light of day crept in, the survivors prepared for a journey that could save or doom them. Because in dead America, every decision was a battle, and every battle could be their last. End of Part 5. Part 6, Into the Fire. The dawn was a pale promise of hope, cold, gray, and fragile. Elena stood at the cavern's edge, the morning mist curling like ghostly fingers around the jagged ruins outside. Every step forward would mean risking everything: Lily's fragile life, their battered group, and the thin thread holding their fragile alliance together. The surface was a wasteland. The city lay in ruins, streets cracked and littered with abandoned cars and debris. Towering skeletons of buildings loomed overhead, their shadows like silent sentinels watching the dead and the living alike. Elena led the group cautiously, eyes sharp, senses alert. Mara was beside her, silent and deadly as always, while Marcus kept a watchful eye on the rear. "This route is the fastest," Mara whispered. "The clinic is on the other side of the old hospital. But the Hollow have been moving in packs. We'll have to be fast and quiet." Sam glanced nervously at the shattered streets. "How do we even know the clinic is still there?" "We don't," Elena admitted. "But it's a risk we have to take." They moved in tight formation, hearts pounding with every snap of broken glass and rustle of the wind. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant groans of the Hollow, always lurking, always hunting. Hours passed. Every shadow seemed to twitch with menace. Every corner held a threat. Suddenly, a chilling howl cut through the air, not a Hollow's growl, but a human scream. "Ambush," Mara hissed. From the ruins, figures emerged, survivors, but not allies. Ragged, desperate, and dangerous. They wielded makeshift weapons and wild eyes filled with suspicion and anger. "We don't want trouble," Elena called out, raising her hands slowly. But the other group didn't lower their weapons. "You're trespassing," their leader snarled. "This is our territory." Tension crackled like electricity. One wrong move, and it would erupt into violence. Elena stepped forward, voice steady. "We're just trying to save a friend. We don't want to fight." The leader sneered. "Survival means strength. If you're weak, you don't last." A standoff, both groups wary, both knowing that trust was a fragile currency in this shattered world. Then, without warning, a guttural roar erupted from behind Elena's group. The Hollow, drawn by the noise and movement, surged forward in a terrifying tide. The two groups were forced together, fighting back-to-back against the relentless onslaught. Elena's rifle barked, Mara's blade flashed, and Marcus covered their flanks. But the Hollow were overwhelming, numbers beyond counting, their snarls rising in a deafening chorus. In the chaos, Sam was knocked down, pinned beneath a fallen beam. Elena lunged, pulling him free just as a Hollow lunged for him. They fought their way toward the old hospital, battered and bruised but alive. Inside, the clinic was a flicker of light, a rare beacon of hope. The medic, a grizzled man named Doc Hayes, greeted them with wary eyes but opened his doors without hesitation. Lily was rushed inside, the medics working quickly. Elena paced, every second stretching painfully as she waited. Outside, the sound of battle still echoed faintly, a reminder that the fight was far from over. Doc Hayes finally emerged, exhaustion etched on his face. "She's stable, but it's touch and go. She needs rest and antibiotics, scarce, but we have some." Elena nodded, relief flooding through her. Thank you. But her relief was tempered by the reality pressing in. They had survived the surface's horrors, for now. But more dangers waited. As night fell again over dead America, Elena gathered the group. We have a sanctuary here, but we can't stay forever. The Hollow will keep coming, and the other survivors, they're unpredictable. Marcus looked at her, eyes steady. What's our next move? Elena's gaze hardened. We fight. We find others like us, fighters who believe this country isn't lost yet. Because as long as they stood, as long as they resisted, hope lived on. End of Part 6. Want me to keep going with Part 7? Part 7, Shadows of Doubt. The clinic had become a temporary refuge, a fragile bubble in a world gone mad. Inside, the faint hum of medical machines mixed with quiet conversations and occasional sharp whispers. Lily rested, wrapped in bandages, her breathing more steady but still weak. The group was battered, scarred not just by battle but by the weight of uncertainty that hung over them like a dark cloud. Elena sat near the window, staring out at the ruined cityscape. The sky was a dull gray, and the wind howled through broken windows like a mournful ghost. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something worse than the Hollow. Marcus approached quietly, sitting beside her. You've been thinking a lot. Elena sighed. We've fought the Hollow, but the real enemy might be us. Fear is eating away at this group. People are scared, and scared people do desperate things. Marcus nodded. I've seen it too. The fighting among survivors is just as dangerous as the undead. Trust is breaking down. Which means we need to be stronger, not just physically but as a unit, Elena said firmly. We can't let this fear destroy us from within. That night, a meeting was called in the clinic's small common room. The survivors gathered, faces tired but attentive. Elena stood before them, her voice steady but passionate. We've faced impossible odds and lived. But the fight isn't over. The Hollow are relentless, and the dangers on the surface are growing. But the greatest threat might be losing each other. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. We need to build trust, to work together, to find others who still believe dead America can be saved. That means no more secrets, no more betrayals. From the back of the room, a voice cut sharply through the air. Easy to say when you're the leader, said a man named Harris, a survivor who'd been growing restless and suspicious. But how do we know you're not hiding things from us? Elena met his gaze calmly. Because I'm standing here, asking for your trust, risking my life alongside all of you. But trust has to be earned, and that's on all of us. Harris scoffed but didn't push further. The room was tense, but the moment passed. The next day, Elena and Mara prepared to scout nearby neighborhoods, searching for signs of other survivors or supplies. Marcus stayed behind with the group, watching over Lily and keeping the peace. As they moved through the devastated streets, Elena's mind raced. Every shadow could hide danger, Hollow, hostile survivors, or worse. Suddenly, Mara stopped. Wait. Ahead, faint voices echoed. Soft, cautious, not Hollow, but people. Survivors. Elena motioned to stay quiet as they crept closer. Around the corner, a small group was gathered, armed and watchful. Elena stepped forward slowly, hands raised. We're not here to fight. We're survivors, like you. The group stiffened, weapons trained on them. A woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp and wary. Who leads you? Elena, she answered. We're looking for allies, others who refuse to give up. The woman studied her, then nodded. I'm Sarah. We've been hiding here for months, waiting for a chance to fight back. A fragile alliance was born in that moment, two groups united by a shared goal but still cautious and uncertain. Back at the clinic, Marcus watched the survivors, his unease growing. Harris's words echoed in his mind, and he noticed cracks forming among the ranks, whispered arguments, stolen glances, and growing mistrust. One night, Marcus overheard a heated conversation in the shadows. Harris and a few others were planning something that could tear the group apart. Marcus knew he had to warn Elena. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on Elena's shoulders as she prepared to face not just the Hollow, but the shadows growing within their own ranks. Because in Dead America, the fight for survival was as much about the living as the dead. End of Part 7. Would you like me to continue with Part 8 now? Part 8, Betrayal's Sting. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. Marcus sat quietly by the dim glow of the flickering lantern, eyes sharp and restless. The weight of the secret he carried was crushing, the knowledge of Harris's plan to fracture the group from within. He had hoped to find a way to stop it without causing panic, but the longer he waited, the more dangerous things became. Trust was the fragile thread holding them together, and Harris threatened to snap it in two. Elena entered the room, her expression grave. "Marcus, what did you hear?" He took a deep breath. "Harris is rallying some of the others. They want to take control, to change our plans, to push for a more aggressive approach. They think we're too weak, too slow." Elena's jaw tightened. "We can't afford a civil war now. Not when the Hollow are still out there. We need to confront him before it's too late." The next day, Elena called a meeting. The survivors gathered again, the air thick with suspicion. Harris stood defiantly at the back, flanked by a few loyal followers. Elena's voice rang clear. "This group was built on trust and survival. But trust is breaking. Harris, you want to lead differently. Speak now." Harris stepped forward, his tone sharp. "This isn't leadership, Elena. It's survival of the fittest. We can't wait around hoping for others to join us. We need to take what we need, by force if necessary." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, others looked horrified. "We're not killers," Mara said, stepping forward. "We're survivors, but not monsters." Harris sneered. "Sometimes you have to become monsters to survive." Elena raised her hand, calling for silence. "This is not the future we fight for." The standoff was brutal and raw, words sharp as knives, wounds old and new laid bare. Suddenly, a commotion broke out. Harris's followers pushed forward, and chaos erupted. Gunshots fired, desperate shouts filled the room, and the fragile unity shattered like glass. Elena dove for cover, pulling Mara down with her as bullets whizzed past. In the chaos, Marcus tackled Harris, the two grappling fiercely amid overturned tables and shattered glass. Outside the clinic, the Hollow sensed the disturbance. The groans grew louder, more urgent, as if the undead were drawn to human discord. Elena fought her way to the door, rallying those still standing. "We have to hold the line. Together." With grim determination, the survivors regrouped, barricading the entrances once more. The fight was brutal, not just against the Hollow but against the despair that threatened to consume them. Amidst the carnage, Lily's condition suddenly worsened. Elena rushed to her side, whispering words of hope, fighting back tears. As dawn broke again over Dead America, the survivors were left to count their losses, friends fallen, trust broken, but the fight still burning within. Elena knew the battle was far from over. Because in a world torn apart, the greatest fight was not just against the undead, but against the darkness in human hearts. End of Part 8. Want me to continue with Part 9? Part 9, The Fractured Alliance. The morning light filtered weakly through cracked windows, casting long shadows across the clinic's shattered floor. The air was thick with exhaustion and unspoken grief. The survivors, once united by hope, now moved like ghosts, each haunted by the battle and betrayals that had fractured their fragile alliance. Elena sat beside Lily's bed, her hands trembling slightly as she held the girl's frail wrist. Lily's eyes fluttered open, a faint smile breaking through her weakness. It was a small victory, but in this broken world, it felt monumental. Outside, Marcus and Mara patrolled the perimeter, scanning the ruined streets for threats. The Hollow were never far, and now the survivors had to watch their backs not just from the undead, but from each other. The fallout from the night's violence was a bitter poison. Harris and his followers had been subdued but not defeated. They were locked away, but their resentment festered like an open wound. Elena called a quiet council. The room was heavy with tension. "We can't let this group fall apart," she said, voice low but firm. "We need to find a way forward, together." A young man, quiet until now, spoke up. "There are others. Groups scattered across the city. Some stronger, some more organized. If we can reach them, maybe we can rebuild, not just survive, but fight back." Elena nodded slowly. "Then that's our next step. We'll send out scouts. We'll find allies. But this time, no secrets, no betrayals." The decision was unanimous. Hope, fragile and flickering, was rekindled. Days passed in a tense rhythm of preparation. Scouts moved out into the wasteland, navigating dangers both undead and human. Each return brought news, some hopeful, some grim. One evening, a scout returned with urgent news. A well-armed group was holed up in the old train station, stronger and better equipped. They were survivors, but cautious. They needed proof that this new alliance could be trusted. Elena knew this was their chance, and their greatest test. The group prepared for the journey, packing weapons, supplies, and hope into their worn backpacks. Lily was still weak but insisted on coming, her spirit unbroken. The journey to the train station was perilous. Ruined highways stretched ahead, littered with abandoned vehicles and the occasional restless hollow. Every step was a gamble. Along the way, the group encountered signs of destruction, scorched buildings, hastily abandoned camps, and reminders of the world they had lost. Elena's heart ached for the lives shattered and the friends they'd lost. At last, the train station came into view, a towering skeleton of steel and concrete, surrounded by barricades and watchtowers manned by wary survivors. The meeting was tense. The leader of the train station group was a woman named Clara, sharp-eyed and guarded. "I've heard stories about your group," Clara said, voice cool but curious. "Trust isn't given freely here." Elena met her gaze steadily. "We understand. We're not asking for trust blindfolded. We want to prove ourselves, together." The talks were long and fraught with suspicion. But by the end, a fragile agreement was forged, a tentative alliance to strengthen their fight against the Hollow and the chaos-consuming Dead America. As night fell over the city once more, Elena looked out over the horizon, the flickering fires of new allies lighting the darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, hope was more than just a word. Because as long as fighters like these stood and resisted, Dead America wasn't lost yet. End of Part 9. Ready for Part 10, the gripping conclusion? Part 10, Rise from the Ashes. The cold night air was heavy with anticipation as Elena and the newly formed alliance prepared for what could be their most dangerous mission yet. The train station, now a fortified stronghold, was bustling with activity, survivors from both groups moving together, sharing resources, and training for the inevitable. Elena stood atop a makeshift watchtower, gazing out over the darkened cityscape. The ruins stretched as far as the eye could see, haunted by the groans of the Hollow and the distant echoes of despair. Yet, amid the destruction, a spark burned brightly, the determination of those who refused to surrender. Clara approached quietly, her face illuminated by the flickering lantern light. "You're thinking too much," she said with a rare smile. "It's the fighters who survive, not the thinkers." Elena chuckled softly. "Maybe we need both." The plan was simple yet dangerous, a coordinated strike to clear a major hollow nest deep in the city, disrupting the undead horde's hold and securing a safe zone for survivors to gather and rebuild. As dawn broke, the fighters moved out in silence, shadows slipping through ruined streets and alleyways. Their weapons were ready, nerves steeled, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The Hollow swarmed like a dark tide when the attack began, relentless, savage, but not invincible. Gunfire cracked through the air, echoing off crumbling buildings. Shouts of warning and the clash of steel filled the battlefield. The survivors fought with everything they had, every strike a message. Dead America still had warriors who would never give up. Elena found herself face to face with a Hollow, its eyes empty but full of hunger. With a steady hand, she drove her blade through its skull. It fell, lifeless, and for a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. But there was no time to rest. Amid the chaos, Marcus rallied the fighters, pushing them forward. Mara covered the rear, her eyes sharp for any threats. Lily, though still weak, carried a rifle with a determination that inspired all who saw her. Hours passed like a nightmare, but gradually the hollow began to fall back. The survivors took ground, reclaiming territory inch by inch. When the dust finally settled, the survivors stood victorious, battered, bruised, but unbroken. Back at the stronghold, the fighters tended their wounds and honored the fallen. The cost had been high, but the mission was a success. Elena gathered the group, her voice steady and clear. This is only the beginning. We've shown that dead America can fight back, that we can rebuild. Clara stepped forward. Together, we're stronger. We'll find more survivors, more fighters, and create a future worth living for. Lily smiled weakly from her cot, her spirit shining brighter than ever. We're not just surviving, we're living. As the sun rose over the ruins, a new day began, one filled with hope, resilience, and the fierce promise of resistance. Because as long as these fighters stood, dead America was far from lost. It was rising from the ashes. End of Part 10. Would you like me to help with anything else? Maybe a shorter summary or some ideas for images to pair with your story? Tools.